when you do like factors in consumption, um, income savings tax are like the real bread and butter stuff, the real basics. Uh, so I often teach six factors in consumption: savings, tax, income. Those are the three easy ones. Those are the ones we've just covered, and consumer confidence, interest rates, and wealth effects. And there's two of those I want to look at in particular. I'm just going to write those on the board. So these are factors in consumption, more difficult ones: consumer confidence and wealth effects. Oh, that's not one word. Wealth effects. Okay, and these are factors in C, and therefore factors in AD, right? Because C is part of the AD equation. So we've got our consumer confidence, we've got our wealth effects, and there are two factors in investment as well that I think often get confused. There's a lot of confusion between these four concepts. So we've got two more, but these are not factors in consumption, they are factors in investment. They are business confidence, and I'm sure you guys can easily appreciate why there'd be overlap between these two, and animal spirits. Okay. So the point of this like next segment of the lesson, part two of the lesson, is we're moving on to more complicated factors. We're looking at factors in investment as well as consumption. And I want to distinguish between these four concepts, which often like they're just blurring into one for students, which is obviously a problem because we wouldn't have two concepts for the same thing, right? If people are getting wealth effects and consumer confidence, like if they're thinking they're basically the same thing, there would be no point learning both. The economics wouldn't have two concepts that mean the exact same thing. So there must be some distinction between these things, and that's the one. That's what we want to learn today. So we're going to start with this idea of confidence. It's very interesting, can be quite funny actually if you have a certain sense of humor. But when you ask students to define business confidence or consumer confidence, they will often say something like, when consumers are confident in the economy, or unbelievably, when businesses feel confident about the economy. And I'm sure you guys can appreciate that is not really a definition. It's just repeating the words in the phrase and then adding some more non-informative words. But so I'm gonna pass it over to you guys. What do you think we might mean by confidence? Like what might that actually be? You're gonna have to think about it in an economic way. What would make a consumer confident or a business confident? Jenna says businesses' ability to take risks. That's a very interesting answer. Very interesting answer. So we might say on some level, if you can take more risks, you would be more confident because you maybe that implies you've got more options. But also, if you could take more risks, doesn't that also imply risk? So you might be less confident because of additional risk. So that's a very interesting answer, but a bit tricky to deal with. Rishi says state of the economy, but why? Yes, state of the economy, but why? What exactly is it about the state of the economy which would affect a consumer's confidence, so to speak, to spend or confidence to invest? Got a lot of optimism in the economy, therefore spend more. Krishna says comfortable with depending on externalities, inflation. Oh, we're getting very complicated here. Harsh has got his micro hat on. Good answer, but referencing utility. All right, I think we're gonna have to step in. But well done, guys. Loads and loads of answers. So, oh, Rishi. Oh, Rishi says, so I'm going to assume this is business confidence, that it depends on how likely a return on investment is. That is basically it, right? Think about it. For a business, and I'm going to phrase it slightly differently to Rishi, but he's basically spot on, and you can phrase it in the same way. It's about your expectation of future profit, right? That's what business confidence basically is, it's a great way for you to define it and separate it from this other stuff. If you expect future profits to be high, i.e., as Rishi said, you expect a return on investment, you'll be confident to invest. You'll be more likely to invest. If you think like investment typically is a process that doesn't pay off for a few years, you might think to yourself, okay, what do I think the economy is going to be like in a few years if you're a business owner? Oh, the economy is going to be really good in a few years. That means I should expect a lot of profits to be available, a lot of profit potential to exist in a few years. So I'm going to be confident to invest because I expect future profits to justify that investment, to give me a return on investment. Whereas if you think the country in which you're selling your product is heading down, UK, if you think the country in which your product is like declining, is going into recession, whatever, then you're not going to be as confident because you'll be worried that if you invest, if you spend a lot of money investing, it's not going to generate enough profit or enough revenue to cover the cost of the investment and get you profit in the first place. So to simplify, business confidence is really about the expectation of future profits. And the easiest way to think about that is, as again, Rishi alluded to with his previous comment, it's about the state of the economy. If you think the state of the economy is going to be strong, you'll be more willing to invest money in your business. And if you think it's going to be weak, you'll be less willing to invest money in your business. Okay, Krishna, yes. So hopefully you can see the comments, but Krishna's sort of summarized it all very nicely. I'm liking the interaction today, guys. Maybe it was the mock period. Maybe you needed like a couple weeks to get into it. But all right, yes. Great comment from Krishna, really well summarized. Confidence is the expectation of future returns on investments, which depends on the perceived security of the economy. Only I can see them. How do I, guys, make me good at technology? How do I make it so like everyone can see the comments? Is that a thing? Can I not do that? There's just buttons everywhere. Oh, meeting group. Oh my god. You know what? Maybe put it in. If someone can explain to me after the lesson in the Google Stream. Wait, you guys have to choose. Oh, I see. Okay, all right. Oh, I'm very glad. Sometimes I feel like, I'm not going to suggest this, but maybe you guys should be giving me Zoom tutoring and things like this. Maybe there should be a new generation of students tutoring teachers and like how to use computers and things like this. But okay, all right, Krishna, please. But okay. If that is the case, I think public chats make a lot more sense. Like it's not like think if we were at school. I know we're not at school, but surely we want to recreate that environment. You wouldn't like answer one of my questions by writing it on a piece of paper so no one else can see it and then handing it to me, right? Like I'm just saying. Yeah, get over yourselves. That's what I say, Krishna. And no, hopefully everyone else can see that because no, it's not in context, but okay. Anyway, it's up to you guys. Obviously, it sounds like I can't actually force it on you. But yeah. Anyway, okay, so right, so business confidence, expectations of future profits, basically. Consumer confidence, then expectations of future, because consumers are not interested in profit. What is it for consumers? It's not an expectation of future profits, but and answers in the public. Maybe most of the answers are like so little chance of a bad answer for you guys. So just go for it. So Mira says utility. Yes, in terms of why they consume a certain product over another product. But what I want you guys to think about is why might they be confident that they can spend a lot on products of various kinds, where whatever the utility of those individual products is, what might make them confident to spend generally. But utility again would keep us in micro. It's expectations of future something. It's just not profits. Like think about profits, funds, and investment. What funds consumer spending? Niati says prices, not prices, although you expectation of future prices is a factor in AD, but it's not the same thing as consumer confidence. So that's a great suggestion because expectation of future prices is a potential factor in AD. If you expect prices to rise, typically consumers buy more now before they rise. See toilet rolls around COVID for a great example of that. So that is a factor in AD, it is a factor in C, but it's not consumer confidence. Rishi says, how secure their finances are in relation to the market? Yeah, again, like effectively, I think that's the case we've had so far. It's just expectations of future income. And so Rishi sort of said their finances, what is most household source of finance is just income, right? So what is going to make you have good expectations about your future income? Well, again, think about the state of the economy. If you know the economy as a whole is headed towards a recession, what do you think might happen to your job in future? If you're reading all over the news that UK is heading towards recession, UK worst economic crisis in years, what might you think is happening to your job? You might go, oh no, I might get fired. The economy is doing badly. You know, firms are going to let workers go. There's not going to be enough spending. There's not going to be profits. I might get fired. I might lose my job. I don't know whether I'm going to have good future income, so I'm not going to spend as much. Whereas if you think the economy is doing really, really well, you're probably not going to worry about your job security and your future income. And therefore, you're going to be more likely, more happy, more confident to go out and spend. So very, very similarly, I would say you should think about consumer confidence in terms of expectations of future income, which is tied to job security, how secure you think your job is, which is in part tied to the state of the economy. So expectation of future profits for business confidence and expectation of future income. For consumer confidence. So okay, right, that's our two easier ones distinguished. And again, remember the key idea today is to give you a distinction, a clear distinction between these concepts, just because that's often a problem. So let's turn our attention to wealth effects then. So wealth effects is it's essentially when someone spends more because they know they have more wealth, or if someone spends less because they have some sort of issue related to their wealth, to the value of their assets. And hopefully, we should be familiar from micro that there is a very, very, very important distinction between the concept of income and the concept of wealth, right? And I think this is where students get confused. Now, to me, this is the biggest issue is people getting these two confused because they both relate to consumers spending more in a way because they're more confident. But this is almost confidence because of your future income and you think your future income will be stable. This is, again, it's not to do with your income. It's in the name. It's to do with your wealth. So what happens with wealth effects is essentially asset prices rise, and this is typically going to be house prices in the UK because that's sort of the most common form of wealth, but it could be share prices, it could be other forms of wealth. So if asset prices rise, what happens is more households in the country will move into what we call positive equity. And I'm going to make some notes on this, otherwise I think it's going to be a little bit hard to follow on. So wealth effects, asset prices rise. We can say that's step one. Asset prices rise. Step two, households move into what we call positive equity. Anybody know what that means? Positive equity. To be fair, has different meanings, different contexts. Oh, it's the green viewable. Hopefully, the green is viewable. Poor choice of color. We live in one. So, everybody, what does positive equity mean? Households move into positive equity. We've got false sense of more money, not actually a false sense, almost a very real sense of more money. Drew, Flora, lovely answer. Valued more than what you have to pay back. So basically, positive equity means your assets are greater than your liabilities, which means the wealth you have or the money that you could generate is greater than your debts. So if you imagine, to take a really, really simple example, let's say you buy a house worth £100,000, and to buy that house, you take out a loan for the full value of the house. So you take out a 100% loan, and let's just say, to keep it simple, you pay 10% interest straight off the bat. So the bank basically says, we're not going to charge you like monthly interest. You just pay us back 110,000 over several years, and that's your debt. Okay. So if you're in this situation, you buy a house for 100,000 and you take out a mortgage loan for 110,000 to do that, you would have £10,000 negative equity, right? The opposite of positive equity, negative equity. Your debt, your liability, what you owe is greater than your wealth. Okay. And in that situation, what might happen to your spending? In fact, let me be a bit more specific. Anyone tell me, Devak, I will answer that in a second. So anybody tell me what might happen to your spending if you were in this situation? You realize you owed more money than what you could generate through your assets. So if you sell the house now, you're going to have £10,000 to pay back. Drew, less spending, but why? Why less spending? Question is, well, I don't know if that was the question actually, but that's the only question. Why less spending? Very good. You'll spend less. You need to regain the cost of your own. Yes, yeah, effectively. You need to. If you're in this position, you'd be thinking, I'm £10,000 short in wealth terms. If I sell all my assets, if I sell my house, I'm still going to owe £10,000, right? So rather than spending my income, I'm probably gonna save it. I'm going to consume less and save more, so that I can pay off that extra sort of interest on the loan. So going back to positive equity, and then I will give like another definition and answer Christian's question. So going back to positive equity, think about what happens if, as has happened in the UK over the past decade or so, house prices like double or triple. So you took out a loan for £110,000, you wait a couple of years, now your house is worth £200,000. How does that affect your choice to spend versus save? Right. And I think hopefully it will start to click at this point. If this happens, if the asset price rises, and now you've got positive equity now. Your assets are greater than your liabilities, which means you could sell off your assets and have money in the bank, right? How might that affect your spending decision? If you know, yes, I owe the bank 110,000, but I'm sitting on a house worth £200,000. So if I wanted, I could sell the house, pay off the loan, and I'd still have 90,000 of wealth. How might that affect your spending? Answers in the chat, please. And maybe not Drew, because he's already sorted it. Poundman says yes, you exactly. You could buy another house without going into negative equity. You can spend more basically, and you've got that security in your wealth, right? That's what this is about. And again, it's if you think about what I've explained there, it is actually completely separate from consumer confidence. It's a completely separate thing. Consumer confidence has nothing to do with house prices or equity or assets or debts. Completely separate thing. But effectively, is what's happening is because you have assets greater than your debts or assets greater than your liabilities, i.e., positive equity, you feel secure in your spending because you can sell your assets and have extra cash in the bank, right? It's going to drive me nuts. So it's effectively just a case of that simple arithmetic, meaning you know that you've got spare money in the bank if you need it, right? So we could see again logically the opposite is true at the start. When you're in negative equity, you'll be wanting to save to pay off your excess debts, basically. So okay, to answer a couple questions. So I think Devak said, can you repeat the definition of wealth effects? I have probably gone quite fast through that. So again, just if we've missed it, you can simply define wealth effects as people spending more due to a rise in asset prices, or people spending more due to going into positive equity. I would say those two definitions would be equally fine. And then positive equity, if we want a definition of that, is just when your assets are greater than your liabilities. Just think what you own is worth more than your debts. And then negative equity is, of course, going to be the opposite when your debts are greater than the value of what you own. Okay, any questions? Oh, wait, there was one from Krishna I didn't answer. Kind of like long-term disposability of wealth. Yeah, in a way, yeah, absolutely. So you are effectively thinking about people's long-term plans in terms of things like buying a house, and then that's going to generate extra wealth over several years, and then that wealth can fund spending essentially. So okay, anyway, right, let's move ourselves on, I think, unless there are any other questions to animal spirits. I should say step 3 actually. Didn't finish that off in case anyone was doing this. Step 3 is people spend more. Consumption rises. That's it. Okay, so animal spirits is a very, very interesting one. Our final one. And it's very unique in that it's really about irrational macroeconomic behavior. And it's really the only theory. If you think back to micro, we had quite a lot of behavioral economics in micro. I would say, or at least off the top of my head, animal spirits is one of the only equivalent concepts in macro where it's really about irrational behavior. And so it is very different from the other 3 already. There's what we've talked about so far is almost very rational. It's rational to spend more if you think your future income will be high. It's rational to spend more if you have that asset value to support it. It's rational for firms to invest more if they expect future profits to be high. Animal spirits, again, is sort of about irrational investment. And I think there's 2 major things to talk about in the concept of animal spirits. And that is firms investing due to what could basically be described as emotions or instinct or gut feeling. Either of those is fine. I like to talk about it in terms of emotional influences or emotional investing behavior. And the second is herd behavior. Where's the border of it here? So first reason firms might invest irrationally, which is effectively what animal spirits is emotional or instinctive behavior. And the second is herd behavior. And the idea here is basically that firms might not invest for rational reasons. They might invest because they generally feel good or they feel happy on a Thursday or whatever. So it's what the guy who came up with this, who I'll mention in a sec, was effectively saying is there's a lot of influences on firms' investment that aren't necessarily related to how much profits they're going to make or them sitting down and doing like calculations of how much they're going to make and whether it's going to be worth it to invest. Sometimes it's just being driven by emotional reasoning. We feel good. We have a positive feeling about the economy or the prime minister. So we'll invest. Maybe something like the Queen dying could be an example of the opposite, where, and I'm sure there are counter arguments here, but you wouldn't expect that to be particularly relevant to like future profits or payoff on investment. But that might be the kind of thing which like dampens the mood of lots of investors and therefore slightly decreases investment levels. So emotional instinctive behavior is effectively just firms going with their gut feeling. Do they feel positive? Do they feel negative? And then that is determining whether they invest more or whether they invest less. Herd behavior, I think, is a little easier, a little simpler to understand. It's just saying firms, if they see lots of other firms investing, they will invest. They won't necessarily think through, is it rational? Is it going to pay off future profits? It will be more like, oh, my competitors are doing this and these other firms are doing this, so I better do it. Or likewise, in reverse, rather, if other firms are not investing, if your competitors aren't investing, you might stop investing as you follow the herd. And again, that's not really a rational process. So hopefully that makes sense. The economist who came up with this is a fellow called John Maynard Keynes. Not Keynes, but often said that way. So John Maynard Keynes, I only mention him because he's like a really big deal in macroeconomics. You will hear about him again, undoubtedly, but it's an easy name drop for now, right? So Keynes guy came up with this idea, and very prescient actually. He came up with this quite a long time before a lot of the serious behavioral economics research kicked off. So it was a little bit ahead of its time in that respect. Quite interesting. But okay, so again, I'll give a little pause for any questions on this. Hopefully, we should be clear on a distinction. Devin says, is this the Keynes from the Keynesian theories? Potentially, yes. I mean, can you be more specific? Like, there's a lot of Keynesian theories out there. In A-level macro, again, I don't know if you guys have done this yet, but long run aggregate supply, he's very heavily associated with long run aggregate supply. Yes, okay, yes. So it sounds like that is the one. So yep, same guy. And that's something I'm going to go through possibly next lesson actually, is long run aggregate supply, Keynesian versus classical, because that can be quite a tricky one. Very interesting, one of my favorite topics actually. But okay, so hopefully we should be clear on a distinction between these concepts. And to sort of quickly summarize, consumer confidence, if you expect your future income to be high, which is normally you expect your job security to be high or promotion chance to be high, you'll be more confident, you'll spend more. Wealth effects, if the value of your asset rises, like your house, that gives you security because you can sell your asset and still have money left over, positive equity in other words. That incentivizes you to spend more. Business confidence, same as consumer confidence really, but about profits and how well a firm thinks they'll be able to make profits in the future. And then animal spirits, as we've said, this is not about wealth or income or profits. So these were all about sort of rational reactions to expecting more income or having more wealth or expecting more profits. This is more about irrational, animalistic behavior, right? Instinctive behavior, herd behavior. This is showing the animal side of human nature. Animal